Hi everybody, this is Morgan here with Positive Approach to Math. We are moving right along in our functions topic for Algebra 1. We're going to talk about the domain and range of continuous functions today. For this lesson, just a reminder, anything you might need is in the details below, a blank PDF, an answer key to the U-Tries, and a video to the U-Tries. So please use what you need and follow along so we can help you with domain and range of continuous graphs, okay? So diving right in for your information, we're talking today about continuous graphs. So graphs that are connected and form a line or a curve. What we did in the past, we talked about the domain and range of when we had discrete functions, individual points, right? And we stated the domain and range from least to greatest, and we listed no repeats. It's going to look a little bit different today because we're not doing a list of numbers. We are doing an interval. So for our domain, it is still our x values, but we're going to talk about it from left to right. So we put our smallest value first, as far to the left as that graph goes, to as far to the right for our domain. That's our x. We think about that as the way we read a book. We start on the left of the page and we work our way in. For our range, we're going to talk about the lowest value. I think about low to high, right? So the smallest y value, the bottom of that graph, to the tippy top. I think about how we grow. When we're little, we're just a little baby, and we're super short, and then we grow super duper tall. So same thing for our range. We're going to start at the bottom, where we all start when we're born, and then we're gonna rise to the top. So moving right into it, we're going to talk about the domain and the range, and we're going to talk about it as an interval from left to right. So one thing I want to say is you might have arrows on these graphs, which tells you the graph continues outside of these limitations that we see. So when we have an arrow, that tells us infinity is going to be used at some time, and the graph continues forever and ever. When we have infinity, it's important to note that we will always use parentheses whenever you have an infinity. So if you have an infinity going to the right, you're going to close that with a parenthesis for your interval. And if you have a negative infinity going to your left, you're going to close that with a parenthesis as well. You will never use these things called brackets when you're ending with infinity. For the difference between brackets and parentheses, so brackets are used for closed circles or solid lines. Whoa, I don't know how that happened. Parentheses are used for open circles because what that says is that that's not really included in our graph. We're getting infinitely close to that circle or to that point, but it's not a part of our graph or our function. Whereas a closed circle says, yes, that point is also a part of your graph or function. So I will highlight here, but I do find it helpful to to label your x and y axis. And some people like to go through and do all of their domain at once. They have the left to right mindset in mind, so that's what they do. And then they go ahead and they move to the range, the bottom to top. I'm going to do all of them in one example, so I'll do the domain for letter A and then the range for letter B, or letter A as well. So looking here, I'm going to highlight the x-axis, okay? So for our domain, and I'm going to look and I'm going to say, okay, do you see those arrows? That arrow on the left is telling me this graph continues up and left, right? And then I'm going to skim and I see another arrow. That arrow tells me this graph is going to continue in the up direction because it's kind of at that diagonal, right? So if you extend that, it's going to the right, to the right, to the right, but it's also going up to the sky, to the sky, to the sky. So I like to draw those little arrows up and left, up and right, down and left, whatever we have there. Because that really helps me now. When I go to look at that domain, how far to the left is this graph going? Oh, I see this arrow saying it's continuing out in that direction. So it's going out towards negative infinity. It's never ending. And so to signify that, we're going to start with negative infinity, and then we're going to say comma, so that's how far left it goes. Now your second value will be how far right it goes. So I skim And if you wanted, like, say I'm tracing this, okay, how far to the right? When does it stop? When does it stop? Oh, it has an arrow showing it's going to go to the right, to the right, to the right forever and ever. So it's going to positive infinity. And because it's infinity, I will put a parenthesis. So we put our left value and then our right value. We separate them with a comma. If it's infinity or a number with an open circle, we will use a parenthesis. And if it's a closed finite circle, we will use a bracket to signify that's included. One thing I will say is because this is all numbers, negative infinity to positive infinity, you might also see this as the domain being the set of all real numbers. So I'm going to use that fancy R, or you can write all real numbers, signifying there is no restriction in what you can have in your domain for this graph. So for our range, that's our Y value. So I put that in pink. So we're going to talk about the lowest our graph can go. And I like to say, okay, do you see that lowest mark that I just showed? That's the lowest dip this graph has. If I go over to that y-axis, that's at -5. And that's a solid line, so I'm going to use a bracket. That -5 is included in our graph. It's part of that function. And then we're going to say, how high does it go? This is not the highest it goes. This is not the highest it goes. It has those arrows pointing up to the sky. So what that says is that graph goes up and up and up forever and ever. As it goes to the left, it goes up and up and up. And as it goes to the right, it goes up and up and up. So it goes to positive infinity. So our range, and remember infinity parentheses, our range will include any number from -5 to infinity. There's no restrictions between -5 and infinity. -6, not in our range. -100, not in our range. But positive 100, yeah, because that's in that grouping of -5 to infinity. So we went low to high. So domain is left to right, and our range is low to high. Okay, let's look at letter B. Okay, so looking at letter B, we're talking about our domain. So we're talking about our x-axis. And so we see one arrow, right? I see an arrow here, so that's telling me it's going at that slant. So it's going to be going up and it's going to be going to the right. This guy on the left is a solid circle, so that is not traveling anymore to the left, anymore up, not down. It's dead end, right? So I say, okay, how far to the left is that dot? And I draw a line down to my x-axis. I like to kind of box out my left and right, and then my bottom to top, or my low to high. It maxes out. The farthest to the left is -6. Okay? That's going to have a bracket because that is a closed circle. Now we're going to look at that and trace how far to the right goes, and we see that arrow pointing in that diagonal, so it's going up and it's going to the right. It's going to positive infinity. So our domain will be from -6 to the left all the way to positive infinity. Okay, let's look at our range. So I highlighted our y-axis, and we're going to talk about how low to how high. So how low this graph is that little point of that V that I just put in that blue. And if I go over to my y-axis, that's at -3. It's a solid line, so we're going to have a bracket. Now the height of this graph is not that 5 there that I just marked, right? We see the graph lives on all over here, and it's going up, 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 up to the sky forever and ever and ever. So it's going to infinity. And so our range would be the interval. This is called interval notation. You might have your teacher have you do it like that, where you just have to see if that's what they prefer. Okay. Last but not least, letter C. And this one looks a little bit different. As I look here, I see an arrow on the left, and that's going in that diagonal, so that's telling me it's going to travel to the left. It's also going to travel down. Okay? And it stops here, right? So for our domain is going all the way to the left, which is negative infinity. So I'm going to have a parenthesis, put that negative infinity, and it's stopping at 6 there, and that's an open circle, so I'm going to have a parenthesis. That's telling me that that 6 is not included in my function, okay? For my range, how low we're going down, 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 down. We're going to negative infinity, and it stops at a height, that highest open circle there, that's a height of 7. And we're going to close that with a parenthesis because of that open circle. Okay, so once again, if you wanted, your teacher might have you write it like this. And the reason why I'm not putting lines underneath those inequality signs is because they're parentheses, and so they're not included. If it was a bracket, I would put a line underneath that inequality sign. Okay, so that is how we calculate the domain and range from our continuous graphs. So let's quickly look at our summary and helpful hints. So the first little reminder we have is that arrows indicate the graph is going to go forever in that direction. And now typically if that arrow is the slightest bit slanted or at a diagonal, it's going both up or down and right or left. It's going in both directions. If it's directly horizontal, then it's just traveling right or left. And if it's directly a vertical angle pointing up or down, it's just going up or down, not to the right, not to the left, okay? If a value is not included in the graph, meaning you have an open circle, you communicate that by using a parenthesis for your domain and range. If a value is included in the graph, closed circle, solid line, you communicate that with a bracket for the domain and range because it's included. Infinity always, always, always has parentheses. Okay, and just a reminder, domain is how we read. We talk about that from left to right, and our range is how we grow. We talk about that from low to high. So that is our summary on domain and range. It does get a little bit tricky, but I think if you say, okay, this is the left, let me draw a line down to the x-axis. Let me see where that's at. This is the bottom. Let me draw a line over to the y-axis and see where that value is at. I think that's really helpful. So I left you with 4 problems as your U-try. Give those problems a shot. We'll see how that goes. And then from there, we will move right along to lesson 6. So just a friendly reminder that in the details below, you can access a blank PDF of this note packet. You can access the key to the U-try if you just want to check your work. And then you can also access a video doing these 4 problems for you if you just need some more examples or guidance. Keep up the great work. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Positive Approach to Math so we can keep making awesome content to help you with your math journey. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.